What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a series overview of the Nerf Rival series. This is an updated 2019 version of the same video I already made a few years ago. That video is now out of date because it doesn't cover a lot of the blasters that are currently on the market. So in this video, I'll briefly summarize every Rival blaster that's out on the market right now, along with some pros and cons of each of those blasters. This is not a full review on every single Rival blaster. I actually have standalone reviews for, I believe, every single Rival blaster out right now. So for an elaborate review, check out the standalone videos on each of them. So I'm here to quickly discuss every Rival blaster out there to hopefully aid in your purchase decision. Let's get started. First, the Apollo. This is a spring-powered magazine-fed blaster that's compatible with both the 7 and 12-round magazines. The 7 is more low profile, but the 12 obviously holds more ammo, but it's bigger. Being spring-powered, you have to prime the Apollo every time you want to fire it, so to prime you pull back and push forward up on this top handle. The Apollo is relatively small, but it's still not a pistol. I would say this is more of an SMG class, but it is a primary class blaster. The chrono average of the Apollo is 97 feet per second, which is definitely solid for a Rival blaster. The Rival par for chrono velocity, or FPS, is between 90 and 100 FPS. The Rival Apollo is very similar to the Helios, so if you're interested in buying an Apollo, check out the review on the Helios before you do so. The Helios isn't an objective successor, really. Some people are still going to be drawn to the Apollo, but they're very similar, so check out both options before making a purchase. That is the Apollo. Next blaster is the Zeus. This was also released in 2015 with the Apollo. This was one of the two first Rival blasters, but unfortunately this is totally outdated. There's really no reason to buy a Zeus anymore. I'll still overview it regardless. This is a flywheel-powered semi-auto blaster that's fed through a 12-round magazine. This is the thinner Apollo-style magazine that's compatible with the Zeus, but the Zeus is not compatible with the 7-round or the shorter magazine. The Zeus achieves a chrono velocity of 89 feet per second, which is a little soft for a Rival primary, but it's still competitive. But like I said, in my opinion, there's really no reason to buy a Zeus anymore. It was great when it came out, but now all of the other Rival blasters that are out make this completely outdated and just non-useful. If you like the semi-auto, smaller, lighter package, the Hera has a faster reload and just better ergonomics, in my opinion. And if you want to ramp up your firepower, buy a Perseus, a Nemesis, or a Prometheus. They're all way, way better than the Zeus. It was great when it came out, but at this point, not really needed, but that is the Zeus. Next up, released in 2016, is the Rival Atlas. The Rival Atlas is a pump-action, spring-powered 2-round shotgun in the Rival series. It's fed from the standard 12-round Rival magazine, and it slides in the back in a pretty cool fashion. Spring-powered to prime, you do that, and every time you pull the trigger, you launch 2 balls. So it's a 12-round magazine, but you only have 6 shots effectively. It's a pretty interesting blaster, but I don't see these used very often because 6 shots just isn't enough capacity, in my opinion, for a Rival blaster war. Honestly, a 12-round magazine, even if you had 12 rounds when there's Prometheus, Nemesis, Perseus, these high-capacity, fast-to-reload, hopper-fed blasters, it's just not really competitive. But it's a specialty blaster being a shotgun, so if you really need a shotgun for some reason, this is the only Rival shotgun out there that I'm aware of. The Atlas achieves an average velocity of 91 feet per second on the chrono. There's no successor to the Atlas, but in my opinion, 2-round shotguns just aren't really enough of a shotgun to be a real shotgun, and it's just wasting most of your ammo compared to a single shot blaster, so I think there are better options out there. But shotgun people are shotgun people, and they dig their shotguns. I'm not a shotgun person, so honestly, I can't really relate. So it's an option out there, it works pretty well, but just not as competitive as other blasters in my personal opinion. And that is the Atlas. Next up is the Chaos, also released in 2016. The Chaos is a flywheel, full auto blaster with an external box magazine with a capacity of 40 rounds. When it came out, 40 rounds at full auto was like super overpowered, and this blaster was really fun back in 2016 when it came out. The included magazine is a proprietary magazine that Nerf hasn't used for any other blaster, so this is effectively called the Chaos magazine, compared to the other Rival magazine, which is compatible with so many blasters it doesn't just have one name. But it's full auto, flywheel with a 40-round capacity. It's a pretty fun blaster, but there are so many better options out. This is another one of those that's just completely outdated, and there's really no reason to buy a Chaos today. 40-round capacity, chrono velocity of 101 feet per second, but that is the Chaos, hurrying through some of the blasters that really don't have a place anymore when there are better options out there. So that's the Chaos. Next up is the Artemis, released in 2017. This is a spring-powered pump-action blaster with an internal 30-round magazine. The Artemis achieves a muzzle velocity of 89 feet per second, which is a hair under the Rival par, but still pretty competitive. It has a unique magazine system because it's a built-in magazine. It looks just like these mags, but they're not detachable. It's built into the blaster. So you scoot back the little housing door, then you just shove in 30 rounds, and then you can fire off. And it has slam fire, so this is a very effective small package for 30-round capacity. I mean, it's a pretty small footprint there. This one came out in 2017, but this is still a solid blaster under today's standards. Before you purchase one, check out the Rival Hades. The Hades is slightly bigger. It has double the capacity. It's a bigger blaster, so it's not objectively better. It's not really a successor. It's just an XL version, a different version of it. But the Artemis is a solid pick if you really want to use a spring blaster and you don't want to deal with batteries or flywheels. But that is the Artemis. Next up, released in 2017, the Rival Nemesis, one of my personal favorite blasters of all time. The Nemesis is full auto, flywheel powered, and hopper fed. Hoppers are super cool. Not only does it hold 100 rounds, which is really high capacity, it reloads reloads way faster than a magazine because you don't have to push in ball at a time. It has a hopper door, so you can just dump in balls. Reload time can be under 30 seconds for 100 rounds, which is pretty awesome. Hoppers, in my opinion, are one of the most important features that have come out recently, and this is a great example of it because it makes nerfing in general just more fun. It's really tedious and just time-consuming to load up all your magazines. When you have a hopper, you can carry loose balls in a cargo pocket or it's very loosely just anywhere and very quickly reload, so you're not wasting time loading, you're wasting time flinging foam and having fun and actually playing instead of setting up your blasters. The Nemesis is a large blaster, but before you buy one, check out the Prometheus and the Pierces. They're very similar platforms, being hopper-fed and full auto. Even though it's a little old, I still think this has a solid place in our hobby. The Pierces is different, faster rate of fire, smaller capacity, and it's a smaller blaster. And the Prometheus is larger and a little unwieldy. It's more difficult to carry. This is a classic rifle feel, so if you like that traditional feel, the Nemesis is still a great blaster today. And the chrono velocity of the Nemesis is 98 FPS with alkalines and 102 with the rechargeable battery pack, which I highly recommend. The rechargeable battery pack is not included with the Nemesis, but I definitely recommend checking it out. It lightens up the blaster compared to alkalines, which are very heavy, and you have a slight performance boost, which is also pretty awesome, but a very solid package. That is the Nemesis. Next up is the rival Helios. I don't actually have an unmodified Helios in the shop, so I'll resort to using old footage. The Helios came out in 2018 and has a chrono velocity of 92 feet per second. It's very comparable to the Apollo. They're both spring-powered and have a similar form factor, and the Helios is compatible with both the 7 and the 12-round magazine. The Helios is a great option compared to the Artemis if you prefer external box mags because you can quickly reload, but even if their form factors are very different, before you buy a Helios, check out the Artemis and the Hades. They have a higher capacity, and for some game types, and I think most players, the Artemis and the Hades will actually perform better than the Helios or the Apollo. The 12-round magazines are just pretty low capacity for a rival war. For a normal dart war, 12-round mags are fine, but when you have a 200-round Prometheus and a 100-round Nemesis on the field, 12 rounds suddenly seems really slow and small. But that is the Helios. Next up is the rival Kronos, another one that gets on my top 10 favorite blasters of all time list. The rival Kronos is spring-powered. You prime with the top handle like that. It features an internal magazine of 5 rounds that you get to up top. And the Kronos on the chrono achieves an average velocity of 90 feet per second, which is competitive, especially for a spring small like pistol blaster. Nerf usually makes pistol shoot a little softer, but this is within that rival par of between 90 and 100 FPS at 90 FPS. And the Kronos has a sleek front, so it can actually slide into a lot of drop leg holsters. So this is a great option as a sidearm if you're running a competitive like tactical rig in a rival battle. If you've never shot a rival blaster and just want to get your feet wet, check out the Kronos because it's one of the cheapest ones available because it's a pistol and so small, and it's a great representation of what rival is all about. When you point at something 50 feet away, you can actually hit it compared to dart blasters, especially with Nerf Elite darts, which you're just not going to even have a chance. A solid pick. That is the rival Kronos. Next up is the rival Hypnos, released in 2019. The Hypnos is spring-powered pump action with a top-loading magazine, very similar to the Atlas in form factor, but the Atlas is a 2-shot shotgun. The Hypnos only shoots 1 at a time. So it's more of a classic spring blaster, similar to the Helios and the Apollo, with a very different form factor. I'd recommend using the 12-round magazine, but it is compatible with the 7-round mag, but it's not like you're saving a lot of bulk or anything, so you might as well use the 12-round mag. And the Hypnos has a pretty cool folding stock, which is very tactical, especially compared to other rival blasters, which generally speaking totally lack tactics because it's all about like tag and not being tactical, it's practical. But that is super tactical and great for storage. The Hypnos is a great, very classic feeling blaster, but before you buy one, check out the Artemis and the Hades. They're pump action and feel very similar when you're shooting, but the Artemis and Hades have way more ammo capacity. This only has a 12-round capacity. And like I said, in a rival war, 12-round capacity is pretty low. But that is the Hypnos. Next up, released in 2019, is the rival Knockout, essentially the rival Jolt. The Knockout is spring-powered. To prime, you pull down and then push back up on the priming handle down here. To load, you push the breech release here, shove a ball in, and then fire. The Knockout has a chrono velocity of 88 feet per second, which for a backup pistol or a pistol in general is acceptable in the rival series. Again, the par is 90 to 100 FPS. This is a little slow, but as a single shot blaster, that's pretty normal for Nerf. If you really need the smallest rival blaster available, this is it, but in my opinion, the Kronos is just a better purchase. The Kronos is a little bigger, but it has 5-round capacity instead of 1, and this just takes forever to load because it has a breech, and this priming handle isn't as fast as a top prime. But it works fairly well, so my argument against this is really just why not buy a Kronos? This doesn't do anything wrong or break down. And that is the Knockout. Next up, also released in 2019, is the Pierces. This is a flywheel-powered, fully automatic, hopper-fed blaster with a capacity of 50 rounds. It's very similar to the Nemesis, but this is a smaller package. It has 50-round capacity instead of 100, but its rate of fire is substantially faster than the Nemesis. It dumps its whole 50-round capacity hopper in under 7 seconds. It's pretty quick. In my opinion, this is more of a specialty blaster. It would get exhausting to reload this thing if this is your primary, but if you throw it on a sling as a secondary just to spew off full auto 50 rounds in 7 seconds, it's pretty solid. If you're comparing the Perseus to the Nemesis, remember the Perseus has a much faster rate of fire, and it comes with with a rechargeable battery pack, which is really convenient. The Nemesis, you have to buy that $30 rechargeable pack in addition to the blaster. And the Percy's achieves an average velocity of 104 feet per second, which is definitely quick for the rival blaster. Again, that average is 90 to 100. This shoots 104. Definitely a powerhouse in the right situation for the right person. That is the Percy's. So that's it for the classic red and blue rival blasters. Now moving into a sub-series, the Phantom Core series, which include white blasters with these little flags that you can clip onto the blaster. So if you want to be Team Blue, you get the included blue flag, clip it on, or Team Red. But realistically, you're not going to use these. It's just a white blaster without red or blue on it. First up is the Hera, or the Hera, released in 2017. The rival Hera, whatever, is a flywheel-powered semi-auto blaster with a similar form factor to the Apollo and the Helios, but this is flywheel, not spring. But the magazine still goes through the grip. It's compatible with the 12 and the 7-round mag. But again, you're adding bulk to go to the 12, and the 7 is a little slimmer. The Hera achieves an average velocity of 93 feet per second with alkalines and 98 feet per second with the rechargeable battery pack, which is not included with the blaster, but compatible if you purchase it separately. If you were originally looking into the Zeus, this is a much better option than the Zeus because the reload is faster. But it's still limited to the 12-round magazine, which for a rival blaster is kind of low. I know I say that when a lot of the blasters just use 12-round magazine, therefore it's close to average, but the Prometheus, Nemesis, and the Percy's are out, which have much higher capacity and they're full auto. So you gotta know what you're getting yourself into, and if you're gonna use batteries and all of that, which is another hassle, you might as well just go to the Percy's, Nemesis, or Prometheus. This is going to be cheaper, but you're so close, you might as well just go all the way. Then you'll just wreck everybody. But there are no issues with the Hera. It does what it's supposed to do, and that is the rival Hera, the Hera. Next up is the Hades. This is similar to the Artemis. This is kind of the Artemis's big brother. Spring-powered, pump action, you prime down here, and it's slam-fired enabled with a 60-round internal capacity. The Hades is loaded just like the Artemis. You pull back on this thing and then shove in balls in the top internal magazines. The capacity is 60 rounds, which is pretty competitive, especially for a spring blaster. If you like the Hades, but you don't want as much bulk and you don't want to carry around the size, the Artemis is a very similar performing platform with half the capacity, but it doesn't have a stock, so it's a little shorter and lighter. And the Hades achieves an average velocity of 87 feet per second, which is a hair slow, but still pretty competitive. Pretty competitive blaster for its class. This is the Hades. Next up is the powerhouse, pretty much the most OP blaster in Nerf history, the rival Prometheus. The Prometheus is flywheel-powered, full auto, with a hopper that holds 200 rounds, and that's the advertised capacity, but you can actually get 240 rounds in there. No big deal, it's just an extra 40 rounds. Like, that's a pretty big bonus if you ask me. The Prometheus is not a classic blaster. It's designed to be held from the hip. It's not supposed to be shouldered like a normal rifle or carbine. And the Prometheus achieves an average velocity of 93 feet per second, which is right in that rival power between 90 and 100 FPS. If you haven't used this blaster, it's difficult to articulate how much fun it is because it shoots so fast, it shoots so much ammo, and it's a breeze to reload. Imagine shooting 240 rounds out of like any Nerf magazine, like with darts. It would take so long to load that much ammo, it would kind of diminish the fun. With this, you open up the hopper, you just drop in a bunch of balls, and you start flinging foam. It's super fun. And the Prometheus includes a rechargeable battery pack, which is proprietary. This battery doesn't work with any other Nerf blaster out right now, but keep that in mind when you're comparing prices. And it comes with 200 rounds, which retails for about $40 US, that plus the battery. This is a competitive package. Buy a Prometheus and maybe 1,000 rounds, and you can slay like a team of 10 people. I'm not even kidding. Assuming they don't have Prometheuses as well, otherwise you'll get wrecked. This is a seriously fun blaster to use, but keep in mind if you're a smaller Nerfer, it is a little larger, it's a little weird to hold, so if you're, under 14, it might be tricky to handle this one well. The Rival is advertised for the older Nerfers anyways, but that's just a heads up in case you're, younger and still playing with Rival. Super fun blaster, that is the Prometheus. There's also a Phantom Core Apollo and a Phantom Core Helios, but I already covered the Apollo and Helios. It is the same blaster with a different paint color, so I'm not just going to keep repeating myself because there are like 14 different kinds of Apollos out right now. That's an exaggeration, I think they're less than 5. But reskins won't be included, so let's move on. Moving on to the next sub-series, the Edge series. All the other Rival blasters are specifically designed for player versus player, having tag or shooting each other. The Edge series is target shooting, so it's not as battle effective, but if you're just plinking, it could be a good option for you. This blaster is the Mercury. This was released in 2019. It's a spring-powered blaster with an internal magazine. It's very similar to a Chronos. The internal magazine holds 5 rounds, just like a Chronos. It's spring-powered. You can pull back on this red thing, which can actually be switched to the left side, depending on your preference. And the Mercury achieves an average velocity of 92 feet per second. This being a target pistol is almost entirely a marketing ploy. It's not really better at target shooting than the Chronos, so I would highly recommend checking out the Chronos, unless you're really drawn to the ergonomics or the appearance or some other like subjective artistic reason. There's no objective reason to buy this over the Chronos. Most of the data would suggest go buy a Chronos, it's a better blaster. But it's there just in case you want it. It has a different grip, it sort of looks like a target blaster, so if you're into that cosmetic, that's the only reason you'd buy this over a Chronos, in my opinion. But that is the Mercury. Next in the Edge series is the Jupiter, the sniper rifle in the Edge series. This includes this fancy bipod. It totally looks like a sniper rifle. It even has a scope rail up here, which isn't compatible with your stuff, unless you want to put on the red dot from rival, which wouldn't make any sense on a sniper rifle. You gotta get that magnification, bro. The Jupiter loads just like the Kronos, but it holds 10 rounds and it achieves an average velocity of 92 feet per second. This is totally a target shooting blaster. This is not an effective blaster to shoot people with. It's slow, the capacity is only 10 rounds, and you can't quickly reload like with an external box mag. It's an internal magazine, and it's bolt action. So if you want to feel like a sniper and shoot cups down, shoot targets, this blaster could be fun, but if you're trying to shoot a person, this is not the best one. But it does everything it's trying to do relatively well, so there's no objective reason to avoid purchasing it if you really want to feel like a sniper. That's the only reason you'd buy this one. That is the Jupiter. The next sub-series is the Camo series. First, there's the Apollo, which again I'm not going to cover because it's the same as the other Apollo with a new paint job. The other camo blaster is the Heracles, the Hercules, whatever you want to call it. The Heracles was released in 2019. It's a spring-powered blaster, very similar to the Kronos once again. It has an internal magazine just like the Kronos of 5 rounds. It's primed just like the Kronos. It's just like the Kronos in every way, except it has this bulky piece of plastic here, which holds 5 rival rounds on this side and 5 over here for a slightly quicker reload. That comes at the cost of not being able to fit this into a holster compared to the Kronos, which is a much slimmer blaster. And unless you really, really need that external storage, which isn't that effective, I would recommend checking out the Kronos instead. But this blaster achieves an average velocity of 97 feet per second, which is within the rival power of 90 to 100 FPS. That is the Heracles. Hercules. Now getting into another sub-series, the Overwatch sub-series, including 3 blasters. All 3 of these blasters were released in 2019. First up is the Diva blaster. This is similar to the Kronos, but the capacity of the Diva blaster is only 3 instead of the Kronos' 5. But you load it in much the same way. It has an internal magazine fed just like the Kronos. And the Diva achieves a muzzle velocity of 89 feet per second, which is pretty fair for the rival series. This, just like the other 3 Overwatch blasters, are not really worth buying if you're just a nerfer and you don't care about Overwatch, but if you're a big Overwatch fan and you just want to use something that's in the game, this could be more fun for an Overwatch fan than a Kronos. But if you don't care about Overwatch, buy a Kronos, it'll be better than this blaster. But that is the Diva blaster. Next, also in the Overwatch sub-series, is the McCree blaster. This is a single-shot spring blaster, which is pretty quirky and just like the Diva blaster, only worthwhile if you're an Overwatch fan. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm a nerfer, I don't care about Overwatch, so I don't really care about this blaster, to be honest. You prime and open the chamber by pushing back on this thing, which is not ergonomic at all. Try to do that with sweaty palms and your hand will slide off constantly. I don't like using this. But as you prime, it opens up the rear breech. You can push in a single ball or actually shotgun load if you want to, but it is technically a single shot blaster with a breech load, so it's a very slow rate of fire blaster. In a rival war, or heck, even a dart blaster war, you're gonna get destroyed using a breech loading single shot pistol. But it looks pretty snazzy, so if you're an Overwatch fan, that's pretty much the only reason you'd buy this one. It's a single shot blaster and the muzzle velocity of 74 feet per second, which is way under that rival par. So not only your rate of fire is gonna get you destroyed, but you won't be able to shoot as fast as your opponent, so again, you're gonna get destroyed. Not recommended unless you're an Overwatch fan. That is the McCree blaster. And the last blaster in the Overwatch series is the Reaper blaster. This is a spring-powered blaster that feeds from an internal magazine. It kind of reminds me of a rough cut in form factor, but it feeds just like the Kronos. So you pull back on the priming handle, which is a little unique. That opens up the magazine door. You can load in 8 rounds, which is higher capacity than the Kronos, but it's a much bigger blaster. This is again just recommended for the Overwatch fans, not really the nerfers. If you got up to something this big, you could almost get an Artemis and have 30 rounds instead of just 8, or if you want to go a little smaller, the Kronos has 5 and it's a little faster to shoot. And it might just be me, but this is super boring. This is so flat. There's no texture, there's no color, it's just matte white all along. This is a very boring looking blaster to look at, in my opinion. But again, I'm not an Overwatch fan. This is just recommended for Overwatch fans. That is the Reaper blaster. Moving sub-series into the Star Wars sub-series, this is the Star Wars Stormtrooper blaster. This is the only unique build in the Star Wars series. They also have the Mandalorian Apollo, but this is a completely unique build that isn't, like, they don't have another reskin without the Star Wars paint. But this is a spring-powered magazine-fed blaster. To prime, you pull back on this little side prime handle over here. The magazine goes up in the grip just like the Apollo. It's compatible with the 7-round mag and the 12-round mag. This is a very slow to use blaster. I would only recommend this one to Star Wars enthusiasts. If you're just a nerfer, the Apollo is way better, or the Helios, the Artemis, the Hades, any other spring rival blaster. This one is really more of a collector's piece. You can't remove or adjust the stock. This pointless scope is molded in there. This is a lot of plastic that's doing pretty much the same thing as an Apollo, but it does everything it's supposed to do and achieves an average chrono velocity of 90 feet per second, which is in line with that 90 to 100 FPS rival par. That is the Star Wars Stormtrooper blaster. That is the Mandalorian Apollo. BT dubs. And the last sub-series is the Deadpool series, but it doesn't have original blasters. This is the same as the Phantom Core Kronos, but it's way more expensive. And this is another Apollo that performs just like every other Apollo. It's just a reskin. They work just fine. I'm not trying to degrade these blasters, but again, the only reason you'd buy it is if you're really into Deadpool. So that's it. I've briefly summarized every rival blaster that is currently out. Again, this is being filmed in October 2019, and Hasbro's going to continue to release new rival blasters in the future, hopefully. So this video will eventually be out of date, and hopefully I'll shoot it again in the future. Keep in mind, if you want want more information on any blaster I just mentioned, I very likely have a standalone review video on my channel, so go to my channel and type in the blaster name and the review should pop up. This was not meant to be an elaborate review on every blaster, just a review on the whole series. But now let's get to my top picks, or what I would recommend you check out if you're interested in purchasing a rival blaster. First, the Rival Chronos. This blaster MSRP is about $20 US. You can usually find it for a little cheaper. And this is a great blaster to buy if you've never shot a rival blaster but you're curious to try. They're way more precise and accurate than a dart blaster, and they shoot harder. If you're older than 16 or so and you might want a little bit more power but you don't want a mod, check out a rival blaster. It's a great option. This is a cheaper one to check out. Even if you own a bunch of rival blasters but you don't have a Chronos and you need a sidearm, this is a great one because it can slide into some of the bigger drop leg holsters. So if you need a tactical sidearm, this is a great option compared to other rival blasters like the Diva blaster, the Overwatch crap. It's way too big to fit in a holster. This is a more classic form factor. So the Chronos is definitely one of my recommended blasters. Next up is the Rival Hades for those of you that want to use a spring-powered blaster. I personally prefer flywheels, but if you want to use spring because you don't want to deal with batteries, the noise, there's definitely a good argument to use a spring blaster, and I'm not trying to belittle you guys. I say Flywheel Master Race as a joke because that's just my preference. The Hades is an excellent performer with a 60-round internal capacity, which is high capacity even for a rival blaster. You can single shot pretty slow or go slam fire and go off a little bit quicker, so it's a pretty competitive blaster even up against a Prometheus, another powerhouse rival blaster. So it's not much of a compromise. It's a solid performer, and if this is too big of a platform, the Artemis is equally recommended, but I'm a bigger dude and I don't mind carrying this, so I would gravitate towards the Hades over the Artemis. But if you want a slung springer, the Artemis is obviously easier to sling because it's way smaller, but twice the capacity with the Hades, so if it's your primary, I would check out the Hades first. Next top pick is the Rival Nemesis. Until you get to the Prometheus, which is really more of a specialty blaster, the Nemesis is pretty much the most overpowered blaster available. It's highly competitive, and the hopper just makes nerfing way more fun. It's difficult to articulate because I can't just point out statistics or anything. It's just easier, it's less stressful, it's more entertaining to reload a hopper than a bunch of magazines. It's just faster and more fun. We fling foam to fling foam. We don't fling foam to load up our magazines and gear up. That's usually just time consuming that we don't really look forward to. So with hoppers, you're getting rid of a lot of that wasted time, and I'd recommend just pretty much any hopper blaster, the Pierces, the Nemesis, the Prometheus, pretty solid. If Hasbro's watching, please continue with hoppers. They're freaking awesome. If you check out the Nemesis, I would highly recommend checking out the rechargeable battery pack because it increases performance and it's much lighter. It's easier to wield the blaster without the alkalines. But that's an additional cost that does not come with the blaster. That is the Nemesis, another top pick. And my last top pick, one of my favorite blasters of all time, just because you can't not smile when you're shooting it, the Rival Prometheus. This thing is overpowered and tons of fun to use. About 240 round capacity, advertised as 200 rounds, very quick rate of fire. It's a big hopper door, so it's super easy to reload. It's just a ton of fun to use. When you're price comparing, remember this one comes with a rechargeable battery and 200 rival rounds, which adds quite a bit of cost. On Amazon, I think you can have one for about $120 US. The MSRP is $200, but I would not recommend spending that much because on Amazon you can regularly buy them for under $120. The biggest turnoff of the Prometheus is the irregular ergonomics. It's not like a normal rifle that you shoulder. You have to carry it from the hip, which is a little different. It's tons of fun and it's a powerhouse, but I would consider it more of a specialty blaster. It's not just a traditional primary. If you can get over that though, it is tons of fun. It's overpowered, you fling foams, and you can destroy everybody. It's ridiculous. In addition to the blaster, I would recommend buying lots of ammo. You will fling through so many balls so quickly. But that is my #1 top pick if you've got the money and it fits your playstyle, the Prometheus. Those are my top picks for the Rival series in this 2019 update video. Keep in mind my purchase recommendations and all my pro, cons, and everything I point out to you guys is through my perception of Nerf and how I approach the hobby. The most important thing to remember is we play this game for fun. So if you're having fun, you're winning. It's not necessarily about having the best blaster to literally win the Nerf battle, because as long as you're having fun, even if you lose, you still win, and that's the point of an entertaining hobby like Nerf. I say that because I like to nerd out. I like to pick the right blaster for my playstyle for that day because I'm a little picky about what I use. But don't let it distract you from the point of this hobby, and that's to have fun with your friends, to fling foam, get all your anger out on them without actually hurting them, because you get to fling foam into their chest, which feels so good. But don't worry too much about winning, losing, or having the best blaster on the field. If you're having fun, you're winning. But hopefully this series overview broke down the Rival series for you to make a more educated purchase decision if you're in the market for a rival blaster. If you're interested in more information on any individual blaster I mentioned, check out my channel for a standalone review video of that blaster with more information, and I elaborately review every blaster out there and I show them in firing as well. All of that information can be found in each dedicated standalone video. That is the end of this series overview. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. Thanks for sticking around. I know this was a long one. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.